Testing. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed, saying, let us break their shackles asunder and cast away their chain from us. He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh.
Hello. Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Sorry we're running quite late today. There was a power outage last night, and also I was working late because I have about a dozen chickens in my living room, and they have to go out real soon. So, all right. We're in Psalm 17. Let's just begin by reading. A prayer of David. Hear the right, O Lord. Attend unto my cry. Give ear unto my prayer, that goeth not out of feigned lips. Let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. Thou hast proved my heart. Thou hast visited me in the night. Thou hast tried me. I guess that's the text we're going to get it. And shall find nothing. I am purposed that my mouth shall not transgress. All right, I'm going to start. Look at those first three verses. The first three verses are focused on the personal integrity. His own personal, hear the right. My lips are not feigned. Try me. You have tried me and found nothing. And I don't want my mouth to transgress. Just makes loud right there. So, why is that important? Well, I mean, obviously it's important, but is it so important? Hear the right. Again, it's not hear the righteous in this case. It's what he's saying is what I'm saying. He's saying the things I've got to say are right. My plea is right. My lips are speaking right things. And not just in this prayer, but in whatever situation is that he is, being truthful is important. It's important that men should speak the truth. That they should say that the things that come out of our lips would not be feigned. Sometimes people with their lips, they say things they think people want to hear. I mean, we probably all have done it. I say probably because I don't want to say that you definitely have, but I know I've said things because I thought people wanted to hear what I was going to say. Mostly personal stuff, not religious stuff. It's never been religious stuff, I think. I hope not. But anyways, I sure hope not. I'm not consciously aware of any such things. But, sometimes that happens too, right? People will say things they think the congregation wants to hear. Their listeners want to hear. Because it's convenient and because people fear men. And what's right is not as important as that they be seen to be right in the eyes of their peers. I understand that. I understand the feeling of wanting other people to not look at you as a pariah of some sort of reject. I mean, I understand that fully. Of course, we all have to take a stand, though, at some point on the truth. What is, it's one thing when it's like some little thing. And even when it is some little thing, he that is faithful in that which is least is also faithful in that which is much. If you can't be trusted with little things, how shall greater things be committed to you? If if because it's a small thing and tiny, I'm willing to lie, then that's evidence that I would probably lie in a big thing. We want to be truthful in all our endeavors, down to the least things, because faithfulness in small things, because someone might be, hey, maybe it's here's the thing. It's not that you can't be faithful in a more important thing if you're not faithful in a small thing. So, sometimes people they commit small sins. I'm just going to use that term, but again, a wife may find a man's pleasure. He might, she can tell maybe he's looking at another woman in a way that he shouldn't, right? And this is no woman or man likes to see that in their spouse in any way, shape, or form. But of course, we know there's a much more severe. A man could actually get involved with adultery, and that would be a similar sin, but more grievous. And then many men, though, would never do that, but engage in the first thing. And you say, well, how is it that, hey, I'm able to be faithful in a big thing, but the little thing is kind of hard. It's not a question of difficulty. It's a question of principle. If you are faithful in the least detail, in the smaller thing, in the thing that does not require, that is not like the big sin. If you are faithful in the little sin, the small untruth, the adultery of the eyes, as Jesus, talked about it. If you're going to be faithful in that, then of course you're going to be faithful in the big thing. And that's what that means. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful in that which is greatest. It's not that you can't be faithful in that which is great when you're not faithful with the small, but that if you are faithful in the small thing, you can be relied upon to be faithful in the great thing. And the thing is, most of our lives, we do not encounter the great thing. You know what I mean? In my life, I've been tempted to adultery exactly 0 times. Murder, 0 times. Right? But the smaller temptations, as Jesus outlined concerning murder, that's like angry with your brother. I've been tempted to do that 1,000 times. And therefore, being faithful in that and learning to deal with that means I can be relied upon in the greater things. So truthfulness, even in the small things, is important. Because if you're to be believed in the big things, it is important that we be truthful in the small things. And when we pray to God, I guess I think about it. I'm like, do people pray to God with feigned lips? What does feigned mean exactly here? I'm curious about the Hebrew word. Sorry, that's the wrong page. No, don't cross. I just don't like to have the stream, and it hides all the pertinent information. But it's like, I hope it does. Okay. Feigned lips. Mirma. Deceit, treachery. Yeah, I get so much less out of looking up Hebrew words because they don't, they're just not as familiar to me, I suppose. I've done a lot more studying in the New Testament. Mostly because I don't know if it's actually more studying, because I've done quite a bit in the old, but it's just somehow they don't stick, the words don't stick as hard because they're not as similar to English as, say, Greek words. Especially, vocabulary. From Romans and deceitful, false, feigned, guile, treachery. Deceitful. I was thinking feigned is, well, I guess feigned is being sort of like faked, like acting as if something else is the case, like I would feign a wound to draw someone in close that I may strike at them. Oh, I'm so hurt. And then put them at their ease and then use that as an opportunity to strike. I'm just thinking in terms of deceit. But again, so the specific English word is perhaps not quite right here, but deceitful lips. There's all kinds of deceit, right? There's all kinds of treachery. Why would someone pray to God treacherously, with feigned lips, with the deceit on their tongue? Or is it just he's saying, my tongue does not lie. I don't lie generally. And so since I do not lie, and since I'm a truthful man, hear the words of a truthful man. Hear the right prayer of the righteous. Attend to the cry of the righteous. Is that perhaps what he's saying? Is that maybe his focus is opposed to, like, I'm not lying? Because I could certainly see ways in which people lie to God in their prayers. Probably not alone, in their hovel, or why did I say hovel? Alone in their prayer closet at home at night, when maybe they never bother to pray at that time. But perhaps publicly, when they're praying in front of a bunch of people, then all of a sudden their prayer is false and a lie. I can see how that could be true. The other one's a lot easier, if he's just saying, I'm a truthful man, so hear my prayer. My lips speak true things. My lips are not deceitful. And there's also the comparison with the wicked. There are those who lie and whose lips are I don't read ahead usually. I'd like to, but my life is just wall to wall right now, so it's just there's no time to even. I may scan it for a second before I started. So I don't know. I don't know which way to go, but both ways are interesting. Both ways I thought, like, okay, they're praying in front of other people. Oh Lord, I bless Johnny and bless Susie or whatever. I'm just thinking of all the prayer sessions I've had to be part of, and notice I put it I've had to be part of. I always feel somewhat oppressed sometimes. Well, frequently when I have to participate in a prayer with a circle of people, and it's like praying aloud, and they got to say a bunch of stuff. I've always had a problem with that, probably because of my own personality. Because I'm not. I was saying. To tell you the truth, social distancing is one of my personal powers. I didn't realize that this was something that, like, it could be an asset, keeping your distance from people. I always thought it was a problem. I always thought it was something I had to work on. But now it's like a virtue. I don't know. But, and maybe perhaps being forced to talk to God in front of other people somehow rubs me wrong. I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with it, necessarily. But it is treacherous territory. Because whenever you're praying with other people, you're in danger of praying to them or for them as opposed to for God. And that's not always a bad thing. Jesus himself said in the prayer, he said, God, you always hear my prayer, and I know you know always what I need. But I say this not merely that you should hear, but that for those who are standing around here, so that they could hear. So, I mean, in that sense, if it's fully intentional and nothing deceitful about it, it's perfectly fine to pray for the benefit of those around you. Most, like you hear a lot of official prayers, like in government institutions and stuff. Someone comes forth and brings forth a prayer. It's all for the hearing of the human ear. Quite frankly, a lot of it. Though, I mean, I don't want to judge it all, but I'm just saying it's like there's definitely like a component that is directed towards man as opposed to really directed towards God. But that can be true also. You know what I mean? Like you can have a true prayer that is intended for the human listener also, meaning I pray it to God with the intent that you also should hear. It's not a bad thing. But what it becomes a bad thing when it starts becoming a sort of a lie or deceit. I'm praying it to manipulate people now. I'm praying it to get them to think a certain way, maybe about me, maybe about some subject. I'm using it to manipulate them and not righteously. Let my sentence come forth from thy presence. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. Sentence. Now, for us, a sentence is it's a part of speech. It's not a part of speech. It is a collection of words that has a. It's funny how I suddenly drew a blank on defining a sentence. And it's funny. I've taught English to my kids, and what is a sentence is. It always has an action. It has but it's funny. There's a simple definition for it. Whatever. It's escaping my mind. Whatever. But the idea of when I think of a sentence, I think of grammar class. But there's also the sentence that has to do with judgment, right? Like the sentence of a judge brought down on someone. And I think that's the kind of sentence we're talking about here, not like the my words, my sentences, let's see, sentence. Yeah, I mean it's mishpat, which means judgment. So sentence here is not like we think of like a statement or a question or a command. It is a mishpat. There's a lot of different definitions. You notice there in the on the left here in the Brown Driver Briggs. That's the lexicon, which I've never been trained in the use of, and I always found a bit difficult. It goes through it really goes through the different forms of this word. And it gives you also here in the actual, in the Hebrew writing, and it reads from right to left. It's a big thing. I tried to study Hebrew a bit at one point, but I don't know. I didn't stick with it because it was easier. I was more interested in understanding, it's difficult when you barely understand the English to start trying to understand the Hebrew, From Shaphat, properly a verdict. Okay. Favorable or unfavorable? Yeah, that's just what I thought it was. So it's a sentence in the judicial sense. A verdict. Let my verdict come forth from thy presence, meaning, judge me in this thing. That's the wrong thing. Judge me. Let thine eyes behold the things that are equal. All right. Now I gotta is there anything about equal that I need to know? Meshar, evenness, equity. Okay. Look at, and God, of course, knows the things that are equal. But what he's, again, he's saying, hey, look on this and give me a just verdict. Give me, let it be fair. at least according to, I have obeyed your voice. I have set my heart and my tongue and my lips to do what is right. So hear my prayer. And then judge me. The invitation for God to judge you. You know, it comes throughout the Psalms, like, judge me, look at me, explore me, you prove my heart. I don't know that have I ever prayed to God contextually. I think I have, actually. Meaning, I could never just submit myself openly to God's judgment without somewhat of a, like, well, hey, you know me, and there's so much about me that, I trust that through the blood of Christ, I've been forgiven for my sins, right? So on that basis, I can come before God with open face and not ashamed and have a relationship with him, right? But to just say, hey, all my ways are right. Try me, you will find nothing. There's something very bold in that. And I certainly think contextually, though, what I mean by contextually, meaning in a certain context, I felt this way and prayed this way. Like, I don't know. I don't want to say anything that sounds like bragging, so I just won't, because I just don't. But what I'm saying is, like, maybe perhaps you, in a particular context, like maybe I'm trying to think of something that's, there's some area of life where you're being persecuted or you're being troubled by someone, and you know that in it you've done everything you should do. You've been truthful, you've been honest, you've been open in whatever ways are necessary for that, and you just want God, because it's like you're in the right. You're not fake. You're not lying. You have no wicked motive. You only want what's good and what's right and what's fair and just in that context. And therefore, you could call upon God and say, look, God, in this, my motivations are pure. That the only thing I'm interested in is the right thing. And you visit me in the night. Like, there's a lot of imagery sometimes of being visited in the night. And the thought that is, it says of the wicked that, they lay awake in their beds at night, devising new ways to commit evil. The night is the time when darkness descends and men go to sleep, right? And sometimes not, right? They use the night to cover up their wicked deeds. Or in the night, they lay on their bed and their subconscious mind dreams. There's certain vulnerability in the night. Like, the idea is that you stop being who you were during the day and you just are who you are in the night. Like, at night, I go to bed privately in my home. I don't have any company. I don't have other people watching me, right? I'm simultaneously exposed, in a sense, and vulnerable. That was an unnecessary simultaneous there, because, of course, exposed and vulnerable are kind of synonymous. But, like, I'm exposed. No, I'm simultaneously exposed and hidden. Like, I'm hidden from the eyes of the world. But at the same time, I'm not hidden from myself or from God. It's like, I've had, sometimes alone at night, I've had many moments of deep thought and prayer, and also it's been places where I've got up to no good, alone in the quiet of the night. And what he's saying is, God, you visit me in the night, in that time of, like, under the cover of darkness, when men do so many wicked things. You visited me, you've checked me out, you tried me, tested me. The tense here is weird. And shall find nothing. I don't know why it isn't and has found nothing, because everything else is past tense. But okay, you proved my heart. You've looked into my heart. You've tested it. You found out what I'm made of. You know what I'm made of. In the night you've come and explored me when I was vulnerable, when I thought I was hidden, when the world couldn't see, but you saw, Lord. I am purpose that my mouth shall not transgress. It's very focused on the mouth. Because speech is important. The Bible teaches that by his word God made the worlds. All things are upheld by his word. That may not be mechanically how it works. I don't know. You know what I mean? But that is the ultimate reality. It's because he says so. You know what I mean? When a man is truthful, that is how things work. Like if I'm truthful, I say there will be a chicken coop. This is a silly example, but it's good enough. There will be a chicken coop. It doesn't matter that I go and use my saw and my drill to build it. In a certain sense, it only exists because I say it's going to exist, and because my words are true. When a man has true words, his words become reality, and they are reality. You know what I mean? It's like when we speak the truth, we're speaking things that are real and become real. And the world is real because God says it is. It doesn't matter how that works mechanically. The reason it works mechanically is because it works morally. God is true. And so one of the things you should always remember is that James said, one of the tongue is the most difficult to tame. The tongue. If a man can tame his tongue, he can control his whole body. What a small member, what a big problems it causes. It is set on fire of hell, he said, the tongue. A world of iniquity. Because so much wickedness and evil proceeds forth in the tongue. Deceit, lies, treachery. The tongue is the assistant and the first line of offense when it comes to so many sins. And it makes sins worse. You sin and then you lie about it. To cover it up. Deceiving people. Causing more harm. Causing your own character to be degraded and brought down to a place of, what would you say? Well, it makes it to wickedness. But he purposes that his mouth should not transgress. It's a good thing. We ought to purpose that our mouths do not speak lies and untruth and vicious, hurtful things. There are so many ways in which it can. But if you can control your tongue, you can control your whole body. If you can make your tongue do all the right things, you have no trouble with the rest of your body. None at all. But the tongue is the first thing. It is the small thing, but it is a world of iniquity. Concerning the works of men, by the word of thy lips I have kept me from the paths of the destroyer. Hold on my goings in thy paths, that my footsteps slip not. I have called upon thee, for thou wilt hear me, O God. Incline thine ear to me, and hear my speech. Show thy marvellous lovingkindness, O thou that savest by thy right hand them which put their trust in thee, from those that rise up against them. Okay. Keep me as the apple of thine eye. Apple of the eye, sorry. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings, from the wicked that oppress me, from my deadly enemy who compass me about. Okay. We'll go up to verse 9 is a good place to end that little section. Because then he's going to turn to the wicked and take a look at them. And some very fun verses. So concerning the works of men, I've kept me from the path of the destroyer by the word of thy lips. Meaning, my lips are truthful, but I have taken your word, and that has kept me from the paths of the destroyer. There's one path of righteousness. There are many paths of the destroyer. There's one name under heaven whereby we must be saved. There's one right way, but there are many wrong ways. And the paths of the destroyer, I wonder what that word is. I want to know what destroyer is. Sometimes I get tired of this whole... I wish this thing operated just slightly differently. Yeah. All right. Paths of the destroyer. Peritz. Doesn't ring a bell. Like so many things. But it's good to look at these things. And then the more often you run over them, that's a funny thing to say. I always like the Englishman's Concordance on the right-hand side there. This window should be a little narrower. There we go. This shows you over here, every time this word is used in the Bible. Not too many. 6 occurrences. It's usually the occurrence in that exact form, though. Brown Driver Briggs will talk about the different forms. I don't know. Violent, a tyrant. Well, destroyer, ravenous, robber. From Peratz, violent, that is a tyrant, a destroyer, robber. I'm curious, from this other root word. Okay, what's the root word mean? It's used a lot more frequently. Look at that. It's used like what? 49 times. I don't think they're all listed there. All right. Where's the Strongs? Abroad to make a breach. Break away, down, burst, come out. A primitive to break out in many applications. Okay, so destroyer like a breaker. There's all kinds of ways in which that can be so. I'm just curious. It comes from words like a word that means to break. A violent, one who breaks, one who is violent. One who breaks, destroys, ravenous, robber. That's the translation, by the way. Everything after this big dash is how the King James translators translated it. And if you look on the right-hand side here, why does it not have King James for this? Daniel 11:4. Ezekiel 18, a robber, a shedder of blood. A place for the robbers shall enter. Become a den of robbers in your eyes. Interesting. Has my house that it was a house of prayer become a den of robbers in your eyes? That's Jeremiah 7:11. Jesus quoted that. No lion shall be there, nor any ravenous beast. That's Isaiah 35, which my wife is very familiar with because she wrote the song for me for Isaiah 35. Nor any ravenous beast. I like violent, honestly. And again, robbing is of violent. It's not like thieving. One who robs is one who is, in English, it means someone who is, like, rob. I thought maybe it was different. Robbery. I thought robbery was like armed robbery was like when you go into the store with a gun, right? And it's like up close and in your face and impersonal. If like someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, give me your wallet," that's robbery. It's not precisely thievery or certainly not burglary. We all know burglary is like breaking in and burgling. Preferably, I'm sure they prefer that no one's around. Okay, well, that's enough. So, wait a second. Oh, and then it's Psalm 17:4. Here we are. It's the destroyer. So it's translated mostly robbers. And Jesus in Jeremiah 7:11 in the New Testament, didn't they call it a den of thieves? So it can mean thief. Certainly, it's going to be contextual. But in general, it is a more general term. We're going to think of it here as destroyers is fine. But, robbery, thieving, it's a destructive behavior. Like right now is with people looting and such, right? Right, and the riots going on in the city right here, 10 miles away, a tiny little city, 26,000 people. They had rioting and people breaking windows. I don't know if you saw my Bloodstained Bible video, the music video, on my other channel. And if you look at the video I did, which is called The Bloodstained Bible Explained, which is a commentary on that, 2 hours, but there's a link in the description to go there. And there's also, every time I have a Bible study, I mention my other channel, which is real easy to get to because it's just my name. I got that a long time ago, before YouTube got all picky about it. You had to be like super successful before you could get a URL. I shot on location in the town of Freeport, the town nearby where I live. It's only 26,000, I think, people live there. But they managed to spark a riot. But I filmed on location. Half the businesses are closed, and all the businesses in the downtown area are these small businesses, right? And they go down there. Why don't they go down to Walmart? They gotta go down to the downtown area of Freeport. It's already struggling to be a downtown area. All these little businesses, a little art gallery, little barber shop. And they go down there and start breaking things. And of course, there was a peaceful protest, but then, of course, you have these radicals that come in. And, I'll just be a little racist about it. They're white. These white folks come in. And they start breaking stuff. Because they don't care. It's because it's a war on the middle class. It's a war on industrious people. And they care not. It has nothing to do with they're pretending to care about minorities and stuff like that. That's just a pretext. What they want to do is bring down America. They don't want people to be successful. They want people to prosper. They want power. They want to be able to reorder everyone's life. They think they'll make it better, but they're going to turn it into hell. That's what's going to happen if they were successful. I hope they shall not be successful. But anyways, point is, there are paths where people become destructive. I like destroyer here. It's fine. Robber, destructor. Someone who takes the labor of someone else, who steals their labor. A man works hard, and another man takes from him without... obviously, people sell their labor all the time for less than maybe the value that someone's getting out of it, everyone always feels like they're underpaid. Maybe not everyone, but many people often feel underpaid for the work they do. And that's understandable. But it's not the same as robbery. When you've worked hard for something, and someone just comes in and takes it away from you. Maybe they come in and they just destroy it. It's still robbery in a sense. You're being deprived of that which you worked for. And we know, it's we know every society understands that this is wrong. If a man works hard for something, or even if he doesn't have to work hard, he just works for it. That to just, without any cause or agreement or anything, to deprive that person of the works of their hands is wicked. Essentially, concerning the works of men, I didn't think of that in terms of like men's works and robber and someone, depriving someone of their work or destroying their work. I thought of this as the works of men are the paths of the destroyer. But I don't know. It doesn't really matter because it's just concerning the works of men. There's all kinds of works of men. And there are paths that are the paths of the destroyer. We can do the works that are the works of destruction, the works that are the works of wickedness. He says, hold up my goings in thy paths. God also has paths. There's one right way. There's one true way. But, we live that true way in our own way. Meaning, though the righteous way is the same for everyone, our experience in it is not necessarily the same. God may teach me to be truthful a different way than he teaches someone else. You know what I mean? And that there are paths of the Lord, in the Lord. I guess there's like a path, and then within the path you also have paths. And also it could be, when I say it's not, the only reason I'm struggling is because I think, okay, did I almost like make a contradiction? Not really. Because there is one way to be saved, right? But there are many ways you come to that. We come to Jesus is one way, but there are many ways to come to Jesus. Maybe like, I overdosed on drugs, and then I thought, what am I doing with my life? And I was, I tried to kill myself, and then all of a sudden they saved my life, and I was like, what am I doing here? And then like, I was just minding my own business, and then someone handed me a tract, or whatever. There's different paths to come to God, but I think it's not really, of course, it's really not talking about that. It's talking about the ways of our lives, how we live our life, right? And God has a way for us to live our life. And while there's one way to heaven, there are many ways to live your life that are also righteous. Like you could be a carpenter, you could be a occupations entered into my mind that I'm like, do I want? I was gonna say lawyer, and then I was like, well, I'm like, well, whatever. There's a righteous path for a lawyer, I assume. I just think it's such a hard thing. I don't want to judge people, and I don't want to defend people when I can't know the way God knows. I'm sure there's some ethical way to bridge that territory, where you're giving people the best defense they can have, but they're guilty. I don't know. I don't know how they deal with it. Like I've often said, there's only a few kinds of lawyers I'd even be interested in being. Oh, some are interesting, but it's like, but then you think about it, it's like, well, because at one point I was going to be a lawyer, or, thinking I was going to be a lawyer. But then it's like, what, I want to be a prosecutor, put people away in jail? And what if some of them are innocent? Or what do I want to do, be a defense attorney and get people off who deserve to go to jail or deserve to be punished for their crimes? But, I can think of a lot of good, it's like, both are important. People who prosecute to make sure that the guilty don't go unpunished, and people who defend to make sure the innocent are not unjustly punished. But it seems so complicated to me. And I'm glad I'm not. There's other kinds, though. It's like less interesting than criminal attorneys. There's, I've often said, well, maybe like a bankruptcy attorney, help people get out of their debts. But is that necessarily always a right thing? I don't know. But if there is a right way to go in life, for my life, what path, what are the paths the Lord will take me along in my life? There are many paths. I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to be going to my brother's house. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to be going to work on something. I'm going to go out and build my chicken coop. I'm going to have I'm going to go someplace and do something. And I'm on a path. And I should call upon God to hold up my goings in thy paths. Meaning that as I go about my life, that it would be conducted in a right way. That I not slip off the righteous path in whatever I happen to be doing. There's you know what I mean? Like, I can be doing a lot of things, and there's a right path and there's a wicked path. And I want to find the right path. And the way I do that is through God's guidance. He needs to hold me up. Hold up my goings in thy paths, that my footsteps slip not. That I don't go off astray into the paths of wickedness, the paths of the destroyer. I've called upon thee. For thou wilt hear me, O God, incline thine ear unto me, and hear my speech. Give me a listen. You know, I've called to you because you will hear me. I like that. That's how I like to pray. I say, oh, God, hear me. I say that, though, in faith. I say, God, hear me, because you always hear me. You will hear me. You know what I mean? I trust that you hear me. I've in my life prayed, you know, like in the spirit of, is there anybody out there? And that's perfectly understandable. But God has given me greater faith since then. And so when I pray now, I don't go, is there anybody out there? I say, God, I know you're always there. Thank you for always listening. I need you to hear me. Because if you don't, I'll lose my mind. I need someone to hear my prayer. And I'm so thankful it's you. Thou who dwells in the heavens. Turn your ear to me, hear me. You know, God hears all, right? But we want him. We say these things, these are somewhat anthropomorphic, meaning it's making God like a man, like he's got to turn his ear to hear us. Because he can, in a sense, turn his ear away from us. What does that mean? Does that mean he doesn't hear? Well, it means, you know, sometimes I'm close to someone who has a tendency to tune out things, right? Very nice person, but occasionally you'll be talking to them and all of a sudden you realize they're not listening. And it's usually not something important you're talking about. A lot of times you're just kind of talking and they lose the thread of the conversation and they wander, right? And they're hearing the talking, but their mind is on something else. We want God to pay attention to us. We want him to give attentive listening to us, meaning to care about what we say and to hear it the way we want to be heard. Like we're engaging in an actual conversation with someone who is attentive to what we have to say, who is listening to our words and hearing it, and is not merely perceiving the sound of them or even perceiving the words. You know, like you ever say to someone, no, really listen to what I'm saying. Like, and it means bring all your powers of understanding to bear. So you're not just hearing what I'm saying, but you're really hearing it. So it sinks down into your ears, as is one of the metaphors used in the scriptures. And let it sink down into your ears. Let it really get into your head. And we want God to, in that sense, like us, we want him to feel like he's really paying attention. Show thy marvellous lovingkindness, O thou that savest by thy right hand them which put their trust in thee from those that rise up against them. So, we know that he will hear us. We put our trust in him. It is good to put your trust in the Lord. God likes that. Sometimes I'm in circumstances where I don't know what's going to happen. I might be nervous. I might be fearful even. But when I turn to God in prayer, I try to pray the prayer of faith and not one of fear. I know whatever is in store for me, you will turn it to my good. And I trust that. And even if it is painful, I know that it ultimately do me good, and that all the things you have in store for me are good. And some things that could happen to me that might do me good, I dread. You know what I mean? Like laying your life down. You know? I already have enough trouble laying it down metaphorically that to actually have to actually lay my life down is, you know, if you don't understand how much of a trial that could be, then you haven't really considered the question. You know? Show thy marvelous lovingkindness. I want to look at marvel. Do I need to? I'm not going to bring marvelous lovingkindness. The word marvelous means to be separated or distinct, which is similar, it reminds me of holiness. Loving kindness is favor. It's like the word grace in the New Testament. Marvel in English means something to be marveled at, right? And this is something like set apart, something distinct, something notable by being different and set apart. God's goodness, God's favor is indeed something to marvel at. Because if God be for us, who can be against us? You know, to have God on our side is the ultimate advantage. To have him on your side is a great advantage. To be favored of God. So I always feel so unworthy because God has favored me in so many ways. I've received so many good things of God. He even favored me with when I received the Holy Spirit, that it happened in a way that I find remarkable and powerful. And it's great. And what for? Why me? There's no why me. It's because he is favorable, because he is gracious, merciful, and marvelous in his favor. He's kind to those who do not necessarily deserve it, because none of us necessarily do. But having received favor of God, we need to put our trust in him and ask him, as in the psalm here, is to help us keep our paths right. Because if he helps us and gives us the assistance and we can do those things, we are pleasing to him. We know we're pleasing to him. And therefore, there's fewer reasons for, I don't want to have painful, chastising experiences, to get me back on the right path. I want to be on the right path so I can turn to God in prayer and because I do not desire that I should suffer, though I know that on the behalf of Christ it is given to me to suffer, like it says in Philippians. So thou savest by the right hand. The right hand is, why is he saved by his right hand? Well, it means by, the right hand is the powerful hand. So it means with your most powerful asset. Your right hand is the one that knows all the cunning things. I mean, obviously there's people who are left-handed, but they're just strange. And, but right hand, if it's your dominant hand, it's like if you're left-handed, then it is your left hand. But for God, but right hand for most people, and in the scriptures, indicates the dominant, strong, skillful hand. So by your right hand, meaning exert your power, put forth your strength, and save those that put their trust in you, and save from those that rise up against them. There are those that rise up against us. So put forth your hand to save powerfully, with strength. And keep me as the apple of thine eye. When I say thine, keep me as the apple of the eye. It's the apple of the eye. It is the pupil. Why it is called the apple, I've heard people say because people used to think it was shaped like an apple. I don't know. It is shaped like an apple, which is round. So, no, apples are oblong. Well, they're round. If you come from the top, they're definitely round. I mean, it all depends on how you look at it. But anyways, the eye, obviously, what it means is it's something is a vulnerable part of the human anatomy, the eye. I always taught my kids, if you're ever in a real dire situation, a real, people talk about fighting and stuff. I mean, I teach my kids wrestling, and we do, submission grappling, and they know how to choke people out and all that stuff, right? All that fun stuff, how to bend their arms backwards and twist them up into pretzels. But, all that stuff's out the window in a real conflict, in which you basically need maybe 3 moves. You need the headbutt, the kick to the groin, and, of course, the eye gouge. Because the eye is a very vulnerable place. But not as easy to get to as the groin very often. So, and headbutt is, element of surprise. You just got to know how to do it right. But a lot of people just never, they get up close and in your face, and boy, they don't really expect the top of your head to land on their nose. But it's highly effective. And, not that I encourage violence, but there are violent men, right? So anyways, there's the apple of the eye. The reason, eye gouge is effective is because it's a vulnerable place that needs to be protected. And people will protect their eyes. You start going after their eyes, you'll see them being very protective of them. Hide me under the shadow of thy wings. Again, it's obviously a sort of a metaphor of the birds. Birds will keep their young ones hidden under their wings. It's a protection. And God also has wings, in a metaphorical sense, under which to protect us. It's his outermost extremities. But the idea is they keep, there's feathers to protect the young ones from the wet and from the cold and from the wind and all those things. And so it's a metaphor of God's protection, God's covering us under the shadow of his wings. From the wicked that oppress me, from my deadly enemies who compass me about. They are enclosed in their own fat. With their mouth they speak proudly. They have now compassed us in our steps. They have set their eyes bowing down to the earth. How many more verses? I got a lot of verses here. And we're at the last minute. I'm just going to conclude this study. I want to talk about them being enclosed in their own fat, but I'm not going to have much fun with it. So, of course, from those who rise up against them. And he identifies those who rise up against God's people as the wicked that oppress him, his deadly enemy, from deadly enemies who compass me about. That's serious business. There are enemies that surround him, deadly. And we live in a society that's been mostly secure. But now there's trouble brewing on every side. And some people are trying to brew it. And they have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea what kind of chaos could come out of this or what kind of terrible order. Chaos is terrible. Order can be terrible too. An excess of order. An excess of authoritarian control. People call for it. I remember when the whole nation was calling, not the whole nation, but people were calling for the whole nation to be locked down. The whole thing. They didn't want people in Wyoming to be able to go out of their homes, just like people in, California. Like I said, I'm not particularly pleased with my state government's response, but I will grant the man for being not an utter not being utterly unreasonable. And including things like outdoor activity as essential activity. Yeah, people got to get out of their houses. You can't lock people up. They need to be able to get out and breathe fresh air. There's no, anyways, and I'm not going to get caught up in that. Thanks for joining me in this study. I look forward to being back. Tomorrow we'll talk about the wicked being enclosed in their own fat. Doesn't that sound like fun? So tune in tomorrow. Tune in next time when we talk about how they are enclosed in their own fat. And we will delve into that and think about that tomorrow when we continue in the book of Psalms. Thanks for joining me in this study. I look forward to that study tomorrow and to being here again. Okay.
Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed.